Breaking news: Nancy Pelosi claims that Hillary Clinton is the person Putin fears the most. Pelosi claims that Clinton is Putin's greatest political foe in Russia. Since Hillary Clinton campaigned for American democracy in 2016, according to the former Speaker of the U.S. House, Vladimir Putin meddled in her campaign. On Monday, Ms. Pelosi addressed global politics, national security, and the backsliding of democracy at Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs. Mrs. Pelosi explained that Mr. Putin was turned around and ensured in an illegal way to come out against her in her campaign, because of Mrs. Pelosi's clarity and position. Hillary Clinton has previously praised House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, and she has accused Vladimir Putin of interfering in American politics because she is more democratically minded than he is. During her time as a presidential candidate and Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton called Nancy Pelosi the gutsiest woman in American politics. She said, "Nancy Pelosi is the most courageous woman in politics today." A comparison to Queen Elizabeth II was made by Secretary Clinton. She said, "She has shown, through all kinds of turmoil and challenge, what it means to get up every day, put on those high heels she wears, suit up to fight for the values and ideals that she strongly believes in, somewhat like the Queen, to be drawing an analogy here." Ms. Clinton is now a professor and presidential fellow in global affairs at Columbia University. Before running against Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential elections, during which Russian interference was a major issue, she served in the Obama administration. U.S. intelligence agencies concluded that Russian firms targeted voter registration systems in at least 21 states and stole voters' personal information to generate negative publicity for Democratic officials and Ms. Clinton following the presidential election and subsequent allegations of meddling. Mr. Trump, who has praised Mr. Putin, raised doubts over the claims that the Russian president interfered in the election process. He told Reuters in 2018 that he had great confidence in my intelligence people, but that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. China's leaders appear to be at a loss as to how to retaliate against the United States without harming their own ambitions in telecoms, artificial intelligence, and other industries, following U.S. efforts that cut off access to technology to make advanced computer chips. The government of President Xi Jinping views the chips used in everything from smartphones to refrigerators to fighter jets as strategic assets in its competition with Washington and efforts to expand its economic and political clout around the world. In February, a Chinese scientist wrote in an official journal that chips are at the center of a technology war. China manufactures low-end processors for use in things like cars and home appliances at its own chip foundries. Since Donald Trump was president, the United States has restricted the use of an increasing number of tools used in the fabrication of chips for use in data centers, artificial intelligence, and other cutting-edge applications. Access to technology that Japan and the Netherlands fear could be used to make weapons has been restricted. In March, Xi accused Washington of waging a containment and suppression campaign against China in unusually blunt language. He urged the populace to take up arms and fight. Chinese industries assemble the vast majority of the world's smartphones, tablets, and other consumer electronics, but Beijing has been slow to retaliate against American companies. More than $300 billion in foreign chips are imported annually. The ruling Communist Party is spending billions to hasten chip development and lessen reliance on imported technology. China has been particularly vocal about its frustration at being unable to acquire equipment made by the Dutch firm ASML for use in etching circuits into silicon chips using ultraviolet light on a scale of nanometers, billionths of a meter. Without it, China's efforts to improve transistor speed and efficiency by cramming more of them onto silicon wafers the size of a fingernail will remain at a standstill. About 1,500 processes and technologies from the United States, Europe, Japan, and elsewhere are needed to manufacture a single processor chip. China can't take in every single thing. Chinese ambassador to the Netherlands Tan Jian told the Dutch newspaper Financiële Dagblad that precautions must be taken in the event of damage. "I won't even try to guess what it is," Tan declared. "It won't be limited to stern language." Concerns have been raised that the world could decouple, or split into separate spheres with incompatible technology standards, if the conflict continues. That would put a damper on innovation and increase costs. Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong warned at a Chinese economic forum last month that the divergence between different economic and technological systems is widening. This will have a significant monetary impact. Security concerns, Beijing's treatment of Hong Kong and Muslim minorities, territorial disputes, and China's multi-billion-dollar trade surpluses have all contributed to the worst state of U.S.-Chinese relations in decades. A tech industry consultant named Handel Jones predicted that Chinese industries would reach a wall in 2025 or 2026 if they did not have access to next-generation chips or the means to produce their own. Jones, CEO of International Business Strategies, predicted that China would soon begin to lag significantly behind the rest of the world. However, Jones speculated that Beijing might have some sway as the largest supplier of electric vehicle batteries. CATL, a major Chinese battery manufacturer, sells to automakers in the United States and Europe. The $3.5 billion battery factory that Ford Motor Company is building in Michigan will use CATL technology. Jones predicted China's retaliation. The public may perceive that China is withholding EV battery supplies from the United States. On Friday, Japan joined the United States in restricting the export of chip-making equipment, increasing the pressure on Beijing. Tokyo does not want its technology to be used for military purposes, the trade minister said in the announcement, which made no mention of China. The spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mao Ning, recently issued a warning to Japan that using science and trade issues as weapons would be counterproductive. Micron Technology Inc., the largest U.S. memory chip maker and a crucial supplier to Chinese factories, was the subject of an investigation announced by the Chinese government a few hours later. China's Cyberspace Administration has made vague claims about investigating Micron's technologies and factories for potential threats to the country's national security. Chinese military research into stealth aircraft, cruise missiles, and other weapons requires semiconductors. In October, President Joe Biden expanded controls imposed by Trump on chip manufacturing technology, raising Chinese concerns. Vice President Biden also forbade Americans from assisting Chinese factories with certain procedures. The Chinese government is increasing its support for the country's burgeoning supply chain, which experts estimate to be worth as much as $30 billion annually in research grants and other subsidies. According to Tianyanxia, a financial information provider, this year two government funds invested 49 billion yuan, $7 billion, in China's largest memory chip manufacturer, Yangtze Memory Technologies Corp. The China National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, or Big Fund for short, was the government's primary investment vehicle. It has invested in hundreds of companies since its 2014 inception with a starting capital of 139 billion yuan, $21 billion. In 2019, the Big Fund committed $30 billion to a new venture called Big Fund 2. Chipmaker Hua Hong Semiconductor announced in January that $175 million from Big Fund 2 would go toward building a 6.7 billion yuan, $975 million, wafer fabrication facility in Wuxi, in eastern China. The cabinet announced tax cuts and other incentives for the sector back in March. The report did not include a cost estimate. 23 universities and 6 additional institutions have been designated by the government as integrated circuit talent training bases. The current China-US trade war centers on semiconductors. In the February issue of the Journal of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Junwei Luo, a scientist at the Official Institute of Semiconductors, wrote about the ongoing technology war in the world. Luo advocated for increased autonomy and innovation within the semiconductor industry. The magnitude of investment needed is enormous. TSMC, the global leader in the semiconductor industry, is currently investing $100 billion over the next 3 years to increase R&D and manufacturing capacity. Researchers have found that developers like Huawei Technologies Limited and Very Silicon Holdings Company can create logic chips for smartphones that are just as powerful as those created by Intel Corp., Apple Inc., Samsung Electronics Company of South Korea, or ARM Limited of Britain. However, TSMC and other international foundries are essential to their production due to their precision technology. By preventing Huawei from acquiring U.S. chips and other technology, Trump has severely hampered the Chinese smartphone manufacturer in 2019. Huawei, China's first truly global tech brand, has been accused of aiding Chinese spying by American officials. To prevent Huawei from gaining access to American technology for chip production by TSMC and others, the White House tightened restrictions in 2020. N.